One, two, 3.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Local Youth Worker, a podcast brought to you by Reformed Youth Ministries. I'm your host, John Parrott. I'm here with Linda Oliver. Linda, how's it going?
Hey, it's going good, John.
And I'm also here with Kurt Cooper. Kurt, how's it going?
I'm back. It's good to see you, John. It's good to see you, Linda.
Yeah, it has been a little while, Kurt, since you've been on the podcast.
John is so desperate for ratings. He was like, we need listeners. We need someone to come in with some hot takes. So I'm ready.
I mean, we couldn't be sure, but it just looked like our ratings had taken a dip, since your absence. It's like, man, okay, it's just too much of a shot to my ego. I just had to have Kurt back on to save the show. So look, over the last several weeks, we've talked a lot about social media, and we've talked a lot about maybe more sobering and heavy topics. And so maybe this is a little more lighthearted. I mean, without a doubt, we'll get into some worldview stuff that's going to be sobering, but we're going to talk about the Super Bowl. And in many ways, we kind of missed our window to do that. If we were very on top of things and trendy, we would have recorded this like at the night of the Super Bowl. Right. And so we're a little removed from when it occurred. And there's, some dialogue about certain things that have happened since then that we might be able to comment on more specifically. Linda, Kurt, did you both watch the Super Bowl?
I watched like the second half. I got home from actually a church service right around the time of halftime. So I got to catch last few minutes of the second quarter and then halftime show and then everything going forward from that. So I had to go back and like watch a bunch of the commercials afterwards, but that's how much of the game I watched.
Okay. Kurt, what about you?
I had evening worship as well. And we got back right as the analysis part of halftime was ending and Usher was about to like take the stage for the halftime show. So I saw all of halftime, and then I was kind of distracted because we try to get our boys into bed and do all that. But I watched most of the second half, and I did not go back and see any of the first half because there was only one touchdown, and I just wasn't dying to see the commercials. So I'm probably the least informed on this podcast as far as what happened in the Super Bowl.
I don't know about that. And I mean, as I've heard many people, sports analysis talking about the game, it was a boring game for the most part. I mean, everything seemed to happen in the fourth quarter and overtime, right? So it was just kind of a slower game and a little lower scoring than what they had expected.
John, can I say something? Because we're about the same age, right?
Yeah,
we're all reasonably close to the same age. And I don't know if you guys remember this. Linda's younger than us guys. That's what I'm trying to say. Linda, I acknowledge it. I'm not trying to age you higher than you are. But I mean, we're within a decade of each other, if that's fair. So, but I don't know if you remember this when we were younger, John. Like, in my mind, and I haven't gone back to look, but when I was when we were like 11, 12, 13 years old, and the Super Bowl kind of became a thing that you were kind of really cognizant of, right? Mm-hmm. They were almost all blowouts. I don't ever remember really good games.
No, you're right.
I'm not trying to say like this generation is spoiled or something. I'm not trying to say that, but I am in some ways trying to say that in recent memory, they've been really, really close games and exciting. And maybe they haven't been like high scoring affairs, but they've been kind of endings and close endings where the game is in the balance. And, anyway, I just really appreciate that because I remember, like the Chargers getting beaten by the 49ers, like 55-0 or something like that. And it was just like over at halftime. So anyway, that's kind of a good thing, I guess.
No, I'm really glad you're bringing that up because I had forgotten. You're exactly right. It was just kind of like, I mean, it was, and I can remember even Jay Leno making a joke of just how the Super Bowl was never lived up to all the hype. And it was just kind of, like you said, one-sided. yeah, I mean, there were, I think of the, who was it? Titans and Rams. Was that it? Where they were
1999
on the one, reaching out,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get the goal line. And that was one that was, I mean, one of the better ones. And then after that, it's just, there's been consistently good games. So, I said we weren't going to talk about anything serious, but there is part of me that just thinks as we're recording this, we have the knowledge that, there was the shooting that took place at the parade with the Chiefs. I have not followed the news much about this, but I did see just a headline about this. Have either of you heard about this? And do you know any details? It seemed like I saw something like 22 people were shot. Is that correct? Can either of you confirm this?
Well, I've seen the same things you've seen. So that one person has died, but there was, as of last night, one person had died, and there were maybe 8 or 9 people who were in like critical or life-threatening condition. And that this, and again, this is speculation, so don't hold me to this, but that this was not an attack on the parade, but instead was some kind of dispute where multiple people were shooting, but at each other. But again, I don't know a lot about that. So all I have is what I read last night before I went to bed.
Okay. Yeah. No, I don't know. I felt like since we have the knowledge that this event occurred, to at least acknowledge it. And I mean, just the horrific thing, you think of a parade, a city celebrating something like this, and then to have something like this happen. And sadly, I see that, and it's not as shocking as it probably should be, because this kind of stuff is somewhat common, to have these, mass shootings and acts of violence like this occur. But, like I said, I just felt like we at least had to acknowledge this. I was thinking, we're going to transition to talking about the commercials. We might talk about the game a little bit more, halftime, some of the movies that were, premiered, the movie trailers. But let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about that. All right, everybody, we are back talking about the Super Bowl and everything kind of related to the Super Bowl. Kurt and Linda, I want you to jump in too. I know you did not see the game as much, but there's discussion about the overtime. I did hear that the 49ers came out and said they were not aware of the new rules. Did you guys see that? That they were confused by the new rules?
I did not read that. What I read was an article that said that they had decided before, but at the beginning of the playoffs, that they were going to be in overtime, that they would take the ball first if they had the opportunity. And I only brought that up with John beforehand when we knew we were going to record this, just to say that it's so easy to criticize decisions that are made in the moment. But oftentimes what I see is people criticizing the decision, but it's based on the knowledge that they have now about how it's going to work out. Mm-hmm. And that's something that my church history professor in seminary, Dr. Hoffecker, would have us do. Is he would have us write these papers where we would talk about big decisions that were made in the history of the church, but we were not allowed to use any information that happened afterwards, right? Any of the results. Instead, we would just go on the information that person had at the time when they were making that decision, or that group of people had. And, I think you could, it's one of those things. I mean, it's a sports game, right? But it also is like a high holy day for the country in some ways. It's like a secular Christmas in some ways. And people want to like say what they would do or what they wouldn't do. And I just think that what the San Francisco coach said is, look, we made a decision. It didn't work out the way we wanted, but I think the decision was the right decision at the time. I just thought that was refreshing to hear. Obviously, he's not just sitting on his couch making this decision in the spur of the moment. But that's kind of how it's treated by those of us who are sitting on the couch. It's kind of interesting. So.
Yeah. And also we've got the news that the 49ers did fire their defensive coordinator, I believe. So there's that. So look, let's talk about commercials a little bit. And we might jump back into the game a little bit as well. But Linda, you said you had to go back and watch some commercials that you missed. Any commercials that stuck out to you? Any specifics that you want to kind of highlight of those commercials?
Yeah, there were, I think, a couple that stood out to me the most just for our purposes of discussion, because they seemed a little bit more aimed at young people. So there was a Snapchat commercial, and there was a commercial for Microsoft's AI, which I think is called Copilot.
Okay.
Both those I think were really interesting. Obviously, there are lots of other commercials that are just like, hey, this was funny. It involved this celebrity, whatever, which is par for the course in Super Bowl commercials. But yeah, I mean, just to get into the Snapchat commercial some, it's really interesting. Snapchat is trying to market itself as the non-social media social media app.
So I'm interjecting. Can you briefly explain what the commercial was? I cannot remember that. I didn't know if you were going to do that, so I'd love to hear what it was.
Yeah. So it starts out kind of depicting what social media is like, and it kind of devolves into this like really bad thing. And so it's saying like more. So like more likes, and it says more likes, less love. More perfect pictures, less imagination. And with each of these, there's like pictures scrolling through, and the further it goes, the worse it gets. And so it's going through things like more influencers means less individuals, more trolls, less compassion, more contrived, less believable, more consuming, less alive, more chaos, less truth. And it just builds and builds and ends up showing even some like violence and things like that. And then all of a sudden it kind of breaks. And I think new music comes up that's not like building and foreboding. Instead, it's like inspiring. And then it's showing you what Snapchat can be like. And it says less likes, more human, less perfection, more playful, less public, more private, less permanent, more free, less friends, more friends, less trolls, more allies, less judgment, more fearless, less likes, more love. And then over and over, it says more love, more love, more love. And then I think the final line is like less social media, more Snapchat. And there's a link at the end of the commercial that if you go to that website, it essentially tells the story of social media and Snapchat through this lens, and says that Snapchat was built to be like the antidote to social media. And it's built to work just like the way that if we are hanging out in real life together, our conversations would work, where they're not permanent. It's like they fade instantly after they happen, right?
Wow.
And it tells this whole story and says, you know, ultimately, like, it's surrounding ourselves with people who matter most to us that makes us the most happy. We all need more connection. We just need less social media to do it. Less social media, more Snapchat. And so if you understand what they're saying like, you know what you need connection, and you know how to get that is through less social media. Therefore, the answer is Snapchat.
Wow.
So just really, really interesting way for Snapchat to market itself. And if you go to this commercial on YouTube, you can see a lot of people just kind of laughing at that because they see past that message. But yeah, I mean, it's just throwing that idea of like, oh, like we do see you need more connection. We're the solution to that. Instead of what I would rather have us offer teens is like, no, actually, let's offer you in-person real life connection. That's not this social media mediated connection. Right. So yeah, just real interesting commercial.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like I vaguely remember some of those things popping up. And I mean, obviously just Snapchat trying to rebrand itself in some ways. And you wonder who that commercial's for, because maybe it's more aimed at the parents who might have some negative stigma about this. And so they're trying to maybe change some of the messaging there. I mean, you even think about the fact that they were the first social media platform that supported the Kids Online Safety Act. And so it's like, okay, are they trying to kind of separate themselves in some ways? And I don't know. It's interesting. Kurt, you were about to say something.
Well, I'll say that is definitely a revisionist history version of why Snapchat was created.
Yeah,
that's historically recorded, and the internet is forever, as some people would say. And we
So
know
go ahead
that
and tell
that's
us,
not.
Kurt. Yeah, what was it?
The reason why Snapchat was created is so that women could send illicit pictures to men. I mean, this is not even an opinion. This is like clear. The people who started it, that's why they started it. So, and they're on the record. So that is, and this, it's funny that I love what Linda was saying about how they're definitely trying to rebrand themselves. And I think the Super Bowl does act kind of like as an opportunity for brands and companies to try to change whatever image they have. I think you saw this with Bud Light, and you've been seeing it all year in the commercials. But obviously, Bud Light was in a very bad way.
Wait, did something happen with Bud Light? Just kidding.
Yeah, so there's a trans person named I don't even know.
Dylan Mulvaney, is that it?
Okay, Dylan, right. And this is a man who has transitioned to be a woman. So this is a man. Am I allowed to say this is a man who's putting on woman face? Because that's basically what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. And it is Dylan Mulvaney, just to confirm.
That's the name. Anyway, I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just. Anyway, he was on cans of Bud Light. People did not appreciate that. A lot of the constituency that consumes Bud Light did not appreciate that, and Bud Light became almost unsellable. I think at some point in 2023 this happened.
Yeah, and
you can just see how they are really going for it to try to win back the people that they lost. The only people in their commercials now are football stars, right? Peyton Manning, Emmitt Smith. These are they have, and like Snapchat, maybe they're trying to position themselves in a way that doesn't align with the historical reality of who they are. But it's advertising. That's what you're influencing people or trying to influence people or convince people. So. Anyway, that was one of the ads that I saw. They had a couple of ads in the Super Bowl, but that was one of the ads that I saw that kind of stuck out to me. It's like, look at these guys. They're trying to change the way they're perceed. And maybe Snapchat's doing that too.
Yeah. So look, I'm going to run through quickly just a lot of the commercials that were there. I don't know if these are all of them, but just a lot of them. I'm just going to try to bullet point these and then we can jump back and maybe hit some of these, but Popeyes had a commercial, and the interesting thing about that's the first commercial they've ever had in the Super Bowl, and they've been around for decades. Skechers with Mr. T and Tony Romo. Oreos, you remember Twist on It? I thought that was an interesting thing. They were making a decision by twisting the Oreo on whichever side that the cream was on.
No Oreo ever twists that perfectly.
I know, goodness, come on. Yeah, it's like...
Linda, I don't want to burst your bubble, but like the hamburgers they show online too. Those don't really look like that when you order them at Burger King.
It would be funny though to have some kind of parody commercial to where we're actually doing that. Like the wafers are breaking and the cream's on both sides. SNL they need to do something, right? Reeses, where they're adding caramel to the Reeses buttercups and everybody's freaking out and they like destroy the house and all that. And that's a little funny. Okay, let's come back to this. Maybe He Gets Us. We had the He Gets Us campaign with the washing the feet. I mean, that probably is something to talk about. There's the Doritos with Jenna Ortega, T-Mobile, where they have a ton of celebrities trying to get the magenta status and what that means to get the magenta status with T-Mobile. Hellman's, you had the cat meowing like the Mayo cat for Hellman's. Eminem, the Almost Champions, and then you had the NFL players who did not win the Super Bowl, but then you also had Scarlett Johansson thrown in there who lost 2 Oscars. The Booking.com with Tina Fey, Dr. Umstick for the Drumstick.
Love that. Love that.
Pringles with Chris Pratt, that he has a mustache where he looks like the Pringles guy. You had Mountain Dew. You had Squarespace with Martin Scorsese appearing at the end. E-Trade Babies. Starry. I'd love to talk about Starry as a drink because I have no idea how this drink has become popular and what the origins are. If you guys know
Sierra
that.
Mist.
Huh?
It's Sierra Mist. It's a
Really?
rebrand of Sierra Mist.
Gotcha. Okay. I was just like, all of a sudden, Starry was there. I'm like, where did this come from? And how is it actually competing with other brands? So they no longer make Sierra Mist.
That's right. My students told me that, actually. We were playing a game where you had to name sodas, and someone named Starry. And I said, that I'm not giving you credit for that. It's not a drink. And then they like pulled it up on their phone and they were like, it's the new Sierra Mist. They got rid of Sierra Mist. It's called Starry. And so I had to eat crow there and give them their points. So.
Yeah. Linda, did you know that?
No, and I haven't seen this commercial, so yeah,
Okay.
this is all news to me.
Well, and somebody, I don't know, was it like a pop star that was on the Starry commercial? But yeah, Starry, it's been around. Just
good luck to him. I mean, Sprite has that corner like locked down harder than. I mean, congrats to Coke. They got Sprite like just doing everything they need to do.
But that's the thing is,
What 7-Up?
Yeah.
Oh, please, Linda.
Heck, I'm more of a 7-Up than
you driving. Linda drives an Oldsmobile and drinks 7-Up.
Hey,
I don't drink any soda, so
that's true. Yeah, I'm out of the soda game, but Dr. Pepper was always my favorite. I just have a soft place in my heart for Tab. You know, if it's still out there trying to do some things.
But
so look, there was Uber Eats, Oikos yogurt. You had what was it, Martin Lawrence and Shannon Sharp, and he like picks up the golf cart to get it out of the pond. You had Stoke, I think, cold brew coffee, where you had Anthony Hopkins being a serious actor, and then he like puts on a mascot and costume, and he's like running around. You had the RFK Jr. commercial, which he's received a lot of pushback from that, and it's been controversial because it directly mirrored a JFK commercial, and so a lot of the Kennedy family has been outspokenly just angry at the fact that he did that, and so he's come out and he's apologized. So there's that. So the one I did not mention is the Dunkin' Donuts, and it was referred to as the Dunkings, and you had Ben Affleck, you know, some Bostonians. You had Matt Damon, you had Tom Brady, and then you had that influencer. Did y'all say Charlie D'Amelio? What is it?
And you had Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez is in that, and Jack Harlow is in it. And I'm trying to remember who else there. Some famous music producer is in there too, and I don't remember who it is. I didn't recognize him immediately, but I think some people would have recognized him.
Well, and that's the thing is, you know, this Dunkings commercial, there's an extended cut online that's, you know, 4+ minutes, and the vast majority of these commercials are that way. It's kind of like these are the, you know, the little commercial spots are like the gateway drug to the go online. Everybody knows it. And let me just ask the two of you, do you know how much commercials cost this year, Linda or Kurt?
30 seconds was $7 million, right?
That's right. Yes, 7 million. And so even, you know, as we get into some of the movie trailers, maybe in a minute as well, you had 30 seconds and then it's like, hey, for more, go online, you know?
Well, I will just say about the Dunkin' Donuts commercial, self-deprecation always plays.
It does.
It really does. And there's a nice little hinge there to the gospel, but it always plays. And Ben Affleck like making fun of himself, and Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck making fun of their relationship. You know, when she like whispers into the studio microphone, we talked about this, like, and Matt Damon is how you like them donuts. I'm sorry. You know,
I saw that in the extended, and I didn't know if that, I couldn't remember. And him, saying that and then immediately apologizing is.
Yeah, it just plays. And it plays because these celebrities are given a status that they honestly have not earned and do not deserve, and they know it, right? And when they acknowledge that they are really blessed to be in the position they are, but that they are also just as goofy and ridiculous as any other human you meet. It is endearing, right? It's endearing, and people respond to that. And yeah, so well played by Ben Affleck. I thought it was hilarious.
Well, and I might push back and say a status that they haven't earned and they know it. I think some of them, they absolutely think they've earned the status, and whatever comes to them. But
I think maybe so, but I think that I'd like to think that there are celebrities. I mean, I've just heard enough interviews with celebrities who understand that that they are not what their press clippings make them out to be, and the older they get, the more they understand it.
Yes,
100%. And that while they're proud of their work and they think that their work, they might think that their work is good and they stand by it. At the same time, I don't think anyone really thinks they deserve celebrity. Or anyone who's had it. In my estimation, I've never had it, but for people I've heard talk about it, the people who've had it understand that part of their life is not a part that they really think anyone should have or is good for anyone. Mm-hmm.
I would totally agree with that. And I mean, enough, as you have said, if they are in it long enough, they typically, I mean, as we know, nothing's ultimately going to satisfy apart from Christ. And they have tasted that. They have, been at the top. They've had all the money. They've had whatever. And they realize this is not all that it's cracked up to be. So without a doubt. And I mean, I've actually heard that Ben Affleck says he's a Christian now because he has, he was in rehab for a while. I mean, he was, just alcoholic and all kinds of stuff, and has just been broken through the years. And I mean, he was the Bennifer thing when he and J-Lo were first dating and was kind of in all the movies, and then his celebrity just tanked and he was not around. And, finally came back and won an Oscar as a director. And it seems like there's just, he's kind of been broken and humbled. And so without a doubt, I'd agree with that, Kurt.
Jim Carrey has a great,
yes.
I know you've heard it, but in case someone that's listening hasn't, that he talks about, he wishes that everyone could be famous for a little while so that they would realize just how empty it is. I'm paraphrasing, but yeah. Anyway.
Linda, do you want to jump in on Dunkings or anything else with commercials that I mentioned?
Can I ask Linda a question?
Yes.
And this is your podcast, John, but I want to ask Linda a question. Linda, walk me through how you process He Gets Us.
Oh, man. That's a tough question.
I don't actually know at what point of the Super Bowl it aired. I saw it later. But I really didn't I don't feel like I looked at it very deeply. So I can't even remember what all of the images were. It's like I saw it once and that was it. I don't know. It's just so it's interesting to watch all of the reactions to it. Because there are a lot of people that, I think what they're trying to do is give a message about Jesus that might compel people that are seeking, right? And certainly a commercial like that could do that. And you see people on having kind of two strong reactions to it, either like, wow, that's so amazing. They did such a good job of creating a message like that. And people will know about Jesus because of this. And then you see other people that, I don't know, like want to come in and police the message and be like, that's not really theologically up to our standards and all this stuff. And then there's also the conversation about, is that the best way to spend $7 million? And I don't I don't know that I have,
especially when they could give $7 million to the local youth worker podcast. Right.
Right. Yeah. That would be a
wonders.
So I don't know. It's one of those things too, where almost going back to your example of like, it's really easy to criticize decisions that you didn't have to make. Like, I just, will never, as far as I know, be someone that has $7 million to spend on something like that. And so I have no idea like what kinds of decisions I would be making about how to invest those dollars for the kingdom if I had that kind of capital behind me. And I don't know like how they came to that decision, but it's like, I don't know if they didn't spend a lot of time praying and be like, gosh, we just really feel like this is what the Lord is like leading us to do. And I think that it's healthy for us to have space to go like, you know what, that's not what I would have done. But how do I know that like, that's not what the Lord called them to do? And did they do it perfectly? Perhaps not. But have I ever done anything the Lord called me to do perfectly? Perhaps not either.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think that there's space for us to all go like, let's not be so critical about those sorts of things, even if we would have made other decisions on how to invest the money or how to portray the message or whatever.
John, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In relation to what Linda just said, because obviously I've heard a lot of the criticism that she references to the ads, to the spending and all of that. Do you think that there is a significant portion of evangelicalism, Christianity, however you want to describe it, that are so on edge about the message of Jesus being distorted in any way because of things that have happened in the culture that they can't even appreciate something like he gets us because they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop? Is that, do you think that that's something that's happening, or what is the animus against stuff like that, other than the money, which I think is a valid.
Sure. Yeah.
We also have to remember that Judas and the ointment, right?
That's right.
Be very careful about that. But anyway, talk a little bit about that, because I think it'd be interesting to hear what you think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we as Christians have to know, I mean, stating the obvious, we follow in the footsteps of a man who was misunderstood, right? Everything, he was the perfect teacher and people did not understand him, right? And so just Christianity is always going to be, surrounded in misunderstanding. It's always going to be surrounded in arguments, discussions. I mean, let's say, healthy arguments. I mean, there's, theology matters, doctrine matters, and it is very easy to miscommunicate truth about the Trinity, truth about the person of Jesus. And we, I want to say on the more positive side of criticism is you've got earnest Christians out there saying, okay, can we get behind this message? Is this something that's good? But then you've got, the negative side of criticism, those who are just seemingly always looking for an argument, looking for something to fight about, looking for something to disagree on, and are just kind of watching those commercials with, a negative critical spirit, and they're just ready to pounce on it. And I am not commenting on this specific commercial during the Super Bowl because, as Linda said, I remember seeing it, but I don't remember every aspect of it. And I would want to go back and look at every frame of it before I commented on that. But I do think maybe, similar, and this is kind of risky saying similar to Snapchat, but I think you've got people trying to, rebrand Jesus to the culture. And we can say in a positive way, people, oftentimes Christians are not depicted in the most positive lights in our culture and in pop culture, all that kind of stuff. And so maybe some of the motives behind these commercials are saying, hey, look, the Jesus you've heard might not be as accurate as you think. And so let's say that they're trying to get people to see that Jesus was this loving man. And so that's a lot there.
I have noticed, those ads, if you don't watch NFL football, then you might not know that He Gets Us runs ads on pretty much every NFL game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And So I've seen, even though I haven't even seen the Super Bowl version, I could probably guess a lot. I know that there's foot washing involved, and but I could probably guess kind of the theme. But one thing I have noticed, and I think this is where there is some concern, is, and I think you're so wise to bring up the fact that maybe Jesus is trying to be rebranded. That might be a good and a bad thing. But one thing that they don't really ever talk about, and he gets us, is they really kind of stay away from substitutionary atonement, sin. Jesus is our propitiation, redemption. And it's really more about the mercy ministry of Jesus, that he was kind to outcasts, that he helped those who were disabled or disenfranchised. And so it's, and again, I don't know who's behind it. And I haven't done the research on it, but just by watching the ads, because I have seen them, I have noticed that it smacks of kind of what we might call liberal Christianity, where we really focus on mercy and we kind of push truth into the closet. And one thing that I think is very important to understand about Jesus is that Jesus never sacrificed one for the other. He never, he tells the woman caught in adultery. I know this is probably not actually in scripture, but he tells a woman caught in adultery, neither do I condemn you. But he also says, go and sin no more. Right. He calls Zacchaeus out of the tree, and dines at his house, but also Zacchaeus is moved to change his life because of what's happening there, and I mean, I think an easy way to talk about Zacchaeus is a story that everyone knows because there's a song that goes with it. But I would say that what he gets us kind of talks about is Jesus calling Zacchaeus out of the tree. But the truth is that Jesus had to go up on a tree in order to call Zacchaeus out. Right. Zacchaeus got to come out of his because Jesus went up on his, and kind of not focusing on that part. And I think that has people on edge. And I don't think that edge that they're on is necessarily a bad thing to be concerned about.
Yeah.
At the same time, we do want people to be thinking about Jesus and not just we don't want him to be misrepresented. So really interesting, great opportunity for youth ministers and ministers of all kinds to talk about Christ with people. So
and to talk about the good and the bad of those commercials, because you're exactly right. I mean, Jesus offended people. Jesus spoke hard words to people. And, at the same time, we need to say, okay, it's a 30-second commercial or maybe 1 minute. So how full or the gospel can you communicate? I'm
waiting for he gets us where they're like, Jesus called a woman a dog. Like, hey, that's, that,
let's see how that one plays.
I just this does not play on the actual podcast format, but I'm making my class
shrugging his shoulders.
Okay, well, there we go.
I do want to say let's move on to maybe halftime show. One kind of last comment I just want to make about the commercials. All of those that I listed. It's interesting to think just how many celebrities were in those, and how many not just one celebrity, but many celebrities. And it's interesting to me that, I think of the cameos that used to take place in movies, and cameos used to be significant, and now they're not. I mean, it's like anytime someone famous shows up in a movie, it's just kind of almost expected. And it's just interesting that these commercials, spend $7 million and they get all these celebrities, but how much does it actually help the product? And it just kind of seems like white noise now because it's so common. And I guess we just kind of, in some ways, I feel like social media has kind of fed that. Halftime show. Did you guys, Linda, you said you came in and the halftime show was going on. Thoughts on
it? It was about to start. So I did see the whole halftime show.
Okay. Thoughts on the halftime show, Linda?
Gosh, I have not thought about this very hard. We
don't have to spend a lot of time on this.
Honestly, if you want to know what was going on in my mind as he was like, I don't know how far it was into this, but I was like, Usher's dance moves remind me of Justin Timberlake's dance moves. That's what I was thinking. And then I looked up and I was like, how far are they apart in age? And it turns out that Usher's about 2.5 years older than him. And then I was remembering, I was like, man, I remember Usher's You Got It Bad song from 8th grade. And like, he's still making music. He's 45 years old now.
Is he though?
Do what? Is he still making music? Is he not?
No,
I guess
sure
it's debatable. Is that called music? Just kidding.
Yeah. So I don't like, there were a lot of, there was definitely moments later in the performance where I was like, I think that's somebody that I should know, but I don't know who that is. And
I'm kind of shocked that Linda isn't a huge Lil Jon fan, but okay.
Well, there were so many other people he brought out. Like, I had to ask one of my friends, I was like, was that somebody significant? And you were like, she was like, you don't know who that is? My mom even knew who that was. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess I don't know, but it's yeah, I think I didn't realize how long Usher had been around and kind of this legacy he has in the R&B world. And, you know, he can still do all of that at 45, just like Rihanna last year could do all that she did, like, while she was pregnant.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, you've got some talent out there. But
I'm not the first person to make this, to notice this, but there was a player for the 49ers who tore his ACL just like jogging onto the field.
Yeah. Crazy.
And then like Usher and like 10 other people are out there on roller skates and somehow they're fine. And I just don't understand it. That doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah. Is it Trey Greenlaw or Dre Greenlaw? I can't remember, but yeah, he tore his ACL. I mean, his Achilles. Yeah. That was, the only two thoughts I really had about the halftime, was, one, it wasn't that good. And two, Usher hasn't aged in 20 years. Like he looks the same. It is uncanny just how young he still looks.
Well, John, I mean, I think we have to say it. Usher knows has forgotten more about music than I'll ever know.
Yes. Yeah.
But as far as Super Bowl acts go, Super Bowl halftime acts, he just doesn't have the same number of hits. His catalog is not nearly as big as, I mean, people who have performed in the halftime show would be U2, Rihanna, Coldplay.
Dr. Dre, Eminem.
Yeah. Like these people have Beyonce. These people have, we're talking about a caliber of artist that's very difficult that's a really high bar to get over, where they have not just 2 or 3 number one hits, but sometimes more than 10 like classics that everyone knows.
Yeah.
And, by the way, a great idea for a podcast at some point, or I don't say a great idea, but an idea that I had recently is to go on Spotify and pull up the Billions Club, the number of songs that have been streamed 1 billion times, and just pay attention to who has a lot of songs on there. I think it would be interesting and make you feel really old too. But
let's do it. You and I mean, you're back on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, 2025, I'll get you on there. But yeah, like he just doesn't, I don't know if it was that bad of a show or if he just didn't have the catalog to really maintain people's attention for however long that is, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's valid for sure. As well as just his audio. It was hard to kind of hear him at times, which let's be honest, it's hard to dance around and sing at the same time to his
on roller skates. I don't think we are emphasizing it enough on roller skates.
When I saw them all coming out, I'm like, man, this could go really bad really quick.
Like if we had to do this podcast on roller skates, I don't know if all of us would make it through. I'm not saying who.
I mean, I have been doing it obviously, but I'm a little more experienced at that. I do want to say, I mean, it's like I want to mention movies just briefly, but we have to talk about Taylor Swift at some point, and we're kind of running out of time. But I do want to say, okay, the Deadpool and Wolverine trailer, and again, it was a short trailer where it said go online and look at this. I heard somebody commenting on that, and they said the trailer had one job, and that job was this: to convince everyone that Disney isn't ruining this movie. Because, people are saying, okay, are they going to make Deadpool a PG-13? And they obviously wanted a hard R. And if you look at that preview, you can tell it's going to be, what the other two in the entry of Deadpool were. And so it's just interesting too. I mean, Disney struggling with its brand as well. And this is kind of, I mean, in the trailer, Deadpool says, he is Marvel Jesus. Because Marvel is, just left and right having bombs, and it's been that way for a while, and nobody really likes Marvel. Well, he's the savior of this franchise because people, I do think it's going to be a big movie because, you've got two others that have been big in this Deadpool franchise, but I just thought that's interesting. Marvel Jesus, that there's still, even if mocking, that there's this understanding Jesus is at least thought to be a savior by people, but I would say written on every human heart. And so it's just interesting how that appears. Kurt, it looks like you're wanting to say something, but
well, we're going to go far afield here for just a second, but my older son has been reading the Percy Jackson books, and I watched the Disney has a series, on the first, I guess what would be the first book of Percy Jackson, and we watched it together. I told him he could watch it if I could watch it with him just to see what was going on there. And it actually spurned at least one kind of fun conversation. But when Percy Jackson, in the story, Percy Jackson finds out he's the son of a Greek god, Poseidon to be exact. And when his mom tells him that your dad is a god, he looks at her and goes, "Do you mean Jesus?" And then they just move on from that. It's kind of played for laughs, but I just thought to myself, what you were just saying is yep, can't get away from it.
That's right. Yeah. Even if you're mocking, you're still kind of, sharing the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Taylor Swift. I kind of feel like, there's, there's annoyance that we would bring her up just because the NFL has kind of been split on, hey, she's good for business, right? She's bringing in millions of viewers and all this kind of stuff and a lot of money. But then there's, hey, this is football. It's quick cutting to her every 30 seconds. But I feel like we've got to discuss this, but I do want to say, Linda, why don't you tell us a little something about Taylor Swift? Maybe a fun fact. If it seems like you have shared on the podcast, but why don't you just tell our listeners a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, this has always been a topic of discussion with a lot of students and me through the years because, of course, as long as I've been in youth ministry, teenage girls have loved and you could say worshipped Taylor Swift. And the fact is she's just a person. And perhaps I can see this a little more clearly than others in her particular case because I went to high school with her. So it just is it's so interesting, to watch someone that I remember her playing in the talent show and was like, yeah, okay. I guess that's catchy for a freshman in high school, but I don't know, whatever, and then she is this worldwide phenomenon.
The most famous woman in the world.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the time, at some point when she was in high school, she had an agent following her around. And I remember hearing secondhand, oh, she has this agent that, is trying to get footage of her right now because they think that she's going to be the next Britney Spears. And I was like, that's insane. No, this girl's not going to be. And I would say surpassed Britney Spears. Okay. So yeah, they were not wrong.
Yeah, mildly.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I can remember, I guess, her last, I don't know if his last album when it came out, and I was teaching 12th graders at the time, and I knew you went to high school with her, and I became the coolest person because I had that connection with you, and you sent me high school yearbook pictures with her and stuff like that, and yeah, it's insane to think of her influence. And obviously the connection, she's dating, crybaby Kelce. I meant, Travis Kelce. Yeah, let's, Kurt's making a face.
Well, can I pivot the conversation for just 1 second? Cause I don't think any of us are going to have anything too earth shattering to say about Taylor Swift that hasn't been said a million times. And we could like go, there are many corridors for us to go down here, like all the way from, is their relationship like designed to encourage people to get vaccinated? Like, like that you just want to go to any corner of the internet. There's all kinds of stuff you could find about all that. But I just want to say really quickly about all this is that my takeaway about Taylor Swift and her involvement in the Super Bowl is this, that Patrick Mahomes is the greatest athlete since Michael Jordan. And I'm just going to throw this out to you really quickly. I do not understand how he does this. He has all the pressure in the world on him. Okay. He plays the toughest position in sport across all sports. The hardest thing to do is to be a quarterback. His wife, no one likes online and is constantly hated. He has 2 young children who, I don't know, when I had 2 young children, I could barely like make coffee. And he
probably has a little bit of help.
Yeah. His brother, everyone hates and is constantly acting out. His dad, he's like a DUI machine, to put it mildly. And he maybe be going to prison for a while for the number of DUIs he's had.
Brother might be as well too.
Yeah. His tight end is dating the most famous woman in the world. Okay. And all of that is going on. And he is somehow able to just like compartmentalize. And even though I don't think that his team was really that good this year,
they weren't.
Was like, okay, well, now we just go win. And I have no idea how he does it. And it is baffling to me how like the mental capacity. I'm not even talking about the athletic skill, which is clearly there, but the ability to compartmentalize that just blows my mind.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what you just said, but pump the brakes on putting him in Michael Jordan's category. And I know we could spend the rest of the podcast like arguing about that, but it's like the fact that you're mentioning that is showing like he's getting to that point. And yeah, with all the background noise you're just talking about, yeah, it's crazy. And like you said, this was not their best team and they were kind of ruled out. And I think it just gets to he's gotten to the level where there's a mental aspect to this where the opponent is now worried once he steps on the field. And it's like he messes with people's minds now. The reason I brought up Crybaby Kelce is just kind of, and this was the year. I mean, this was the first year where we did see Patrick Mahomes actually lose his composure multiple times. And everybody was saying we're seeing a side of him we have not seen, because he was screaming at players. He was screaming at the coach. He throws his helmet. And then Travis Kelce during the game almost knocks his head coach over and screams in his face. And I will say, obviously, I don't know what it's like to play in a Super Bowl game. There is insane pressure, and I get the passion and all that kind of behind it. My thought is, and of course this related to Taylor Swift, you have a bunch of Swifties who are concerned about their relationship, because even Andy Reid, before the game said, Travis Kelce's anger has been a problem for him. And especially his first year, he is hard to coach because he is very angry. And so you have people like, okay, is he going to be an abusive guy? But I'm thinking of all this going on with our students watching this game. They worship Taylor Swift. They love Travis Kelce just by association with Taylor Swift. I mean, his jersey went through the roof. You have girls who don't even know about the NFL, but they love Travis Kelce. And you have a guy literally almost knock his head coach over and is spitting from yelling in his face so violently. How do we help our youth process this? Mm-hmm. Linda Kurt, who wants to jump in on that?
Yeah, I mean, because like some of what I'm thinking about as we talk about this, you can look at the whole background of Taylor Swift's career and stuff, and so many of her songs are about breakups and relationships that did not go well, right? And it's just kind of the way that our human wiring works, that the more we're around like I don't know, just situations that aren't good and people that don't have good character and stuff, the more that we might not realize like, hey, this isn't a healthy person, because we just think that it's normal and we don't realize that something is wrong. And so I think there's a lot of room with not just Taylor Swift, but a lot of people and the songs they write and whatever else to go like, oh, like there's some things you have not learned to discern about other people. And then you think about the fact that so many girls are looking to her songs as like, this is the way that I navigate life. Somebody does me wrong and I write a song like Bad Blood about them. Or someone, breaks my heart and I write a song like Dear John about them, or whatever. And yeah, it's like we have to help them process like, hey, what is healthy and what's not in relationships. And also like, how do we handle things when there's conflict that comes up, or when we notice like, gosh, someone's treating me in a way that is not loving. Like, what do we do with that? It takes a long time to learn those things, and just giving them, like if someone has been in, even like abusive relationships or whatever, just telling them like, hey, that's not healthy is not going to like get it in their head. Like they have to learn through experience and relationship what healthy relationships actually feel like in order to like be able to discern that kind of thing. So it's not an easy process, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of students that when they look up to things like this, they are, I think their discernment goes down if they look up to someone like this and say, yeah, that is the way to do it.
Well, I mean, nothing could be a better example than that we worship things that we really don't want. I watched a documentary on Netflix recently. It was a 30 for 30 on Ric Flair, who's a wrestler, right? A professional wrestler for a very long time. And Ric Flair embraced his persona as this big money spending, kiss stealing son of a gun. I mean, he's got all this, and in the documentary, they talked about how people love that. They loved it. And but none of them wanted that, really. And actually, it's a really depressing documentary because all he was left with was that in the end. It cost him his family. It cost him so much. And I mean, it's that, and kudos to the documentary makers for not turning away from that. Mm-hmm. But if we think about Taylor Swift, I want to take like the abuse angle out for just a second. We can come back to that. But like Taylor, to put it in, 5 years ago slang, like Taylor Swift is not goals for our girls. That they don't, if you really broke it down about what they want, do they want to be a neurotic 30-something-year-old woman who has no children and is constantly who has a great career, no question, but that's all that she has. And she has clearly, maybe Travis Kelce is an unhealthy person, but she is clearly an unhealthy person too, in a different way. And the way that her relationships have ended just give testimony to the fact that she maybe is the worst person to model your life after if you want healthy relationships. She can't be the victim all the time. So, but all that to say is that, it's a reminder to our students that be careful what your aspirations are, right? Be careful what you set as, this is what I want out of my life, because I think there's a lot of things about Taylor Swift's life that a lot of our girls do not want. Mm-hmm. And even though they would say that she is one of their heroes, and there's that cognitive dissonance of that, and helping them engage that without bashing her and making her like, that's a bad move. It's to say, well, at the same time, we need to be holding up the truth of the gospel, even and especially to the idols that are the most powerful in our lives. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Yes, I mean, not bashing, and because I'll go on record. I like Taylor Swift. I like a lot of her music. I like her lyrics. It's easy for us to mock something we don't understand, and my family likes Taylor Swift. And so it is not a good posture for me to take to just make fun of her and to not, but also to say, hey, look, I like this song, but I don't agree with its message, and to point that out and to help my daughter specifically, like, hey, we can enjoy the artist and we can enjoy some of it, but at the same time, we've got to be cautious of every message that we're listening to and taking in. And I think you're just bringing up a good point, Kurt, because I don't know if I should say many, but oftentimes as we're interacting with music and our children are interacting with it, they're not thinking about what they're absorbing, and we've got to help them with that. And that's true for parents, obviously, true for youth workers, helping students. And again, not just mocking it. If you're someone out there who just hates Taylor Swift, and if you're just going to mock and belittle it, you're definitely going to lose some of your voice with your students. So being cautious of that. And hey, look, we do need to wrap this up. Kurt, how about last word? Linda, if you have some last things too, and we'll wrap it up.
Well, I was just going to say, one thing that I talk with my students about somewhat regularly is where would you like to be in 10 years? If you're 17, when you're 27, what would you hope that your life looks like? Okay. And, the more immature people are going to be like, I want to be like Elon Musk. Right. It's like, okay, well, good luck with that. You're going to need to bring your math grade up significantly. But when we talk about like relationally, like what do you want in 10 years? Like where do you want to be spiritually? Where do you want to be relationally? Where do you see yourself? And then what are you doing right now that is putting you on the path to that? And sometimes what our students want, if you were to ask them and they'd be honest, and what they have put before them as the ideal are so far apart from each other, right? They're so far apart from each other. And, just, I think it's healthy to try to it's hard to do that when you're young. It was certainly hard for me to do it. But to ask yourself, look, what are you doing right now that's pushing you in a direction to where you want to go? And let's make sure that what we're aiming for is where we want to hit. Because we might hit the target. And if we're aiming for a bad one, the bullseye wouldn't be fun. So anyway, that I'm rambling, but
that's good. Linda, do you want to add anything as we close out?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think girls really like, well, I'll say two things about Taylor Swift. There is something about, okay, like she is talented, and in one sense I could say, like, it's not surprising to me that anyone would worship another human being, because we're image bearers of God. And so there is something that reflects God and is glorious, like in each of us, right? Like, and we're made to worship God, and like, why not the closest thing to God, an image bearer? But with Taylor Swift, not only her talent, like she appeals to, like the way that a girl's internal thought process works. I remember years ago getting into a conversation with another female youth leader who said, Taylor Swift is just such a gift to youth leaders because she puts in words exactly how girls think so well in her songs. And I was like, I think you're really onto something there. Like, yes, like some of her songs, I'm like, that's exactly what goes on in a girl's brain. And girls, and I think especially this generation, I've read a lot about like Gen Z loves love. And they're probably there's probably going to be a lot of things that change about like dating apps and like other things as they age up and whatever. But Taylor Swift writes so much about love. And it's interesting, up until the Super Bowl, when I would see things written about Taylor and Travis's relationship, it was all positive. And it was like, wow, like we we're so happy for Taylor. We're seeing our girl like thrive in finally a healthy relationship. And like, this is what it's like when she finally ends up with a good guy who treats her the way that she should be treated. And so I was actually really surprised when after the game, there were these things I was coming across on social media about like, oh, he has anger issues. I was like, oh, I have not paid that close attention. I didn't know this is also true of him. But I think it's kind of to Kurt's point, like girls are worshiping Taylor and they love and all this stuff, but they're not looking at, but what's the outcome of her way of approaching love is not, it's that she ends up in a string of unhealthy relationships and breakups. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, that's not, if teenagers thought through it, that's not really what they want. But it's really hard to see that, on your own if you don't have someone help you process through it. Yeah.
No, Linda, that is really insightful. And there's a lot more there, and there's so much more we could talk about, but we are way over time. But Linda, Kurt, this has been fun just talking about all things Super Bowl, and see you guys soon.